Good evening, everyone. It looks like we have almost exactly the right number of chairs. My name is Jean Henshaw. I'm the co-president of the League of Women Voters of Idaho, and along with my fellow co-president, Betsy McBride. I am from the Star Library, and Betsy's from the Dean Springs Library. So we know from where we speak. These libraries are amazing places, wonderful for our communities. And we're privileged as a league to be sponsoring this candidates forum. And we have invited all of the candidates, we invited all 6 of the candidates who are still on the ballot. And we had a couple of folks who decided not to come. And I just, for full transparency, I wanted to describe the reasons that they gave, if that's okay. Before I go into the format. Okay, there's a front page. I know there's a front page. Oh my God. So, of course, a note about the 3 empty chairs, the 2 empty chairs. Oh, no, 3 empty chairs. Okay. 2 of our candidates, Ms. Moore and Ms. Morehouse, declined to be part of the forum. Here's the text of the email I've received from them. From Ms. Moore, after much consideration, I've decided not to attend the forum for various reasons. I am campaigning with Rachel Morehouse, and she will also not be in attendance. We appreciate the invite, but we feel it does not fit into our campaign plans. We did fill out the information for your website. That's vote411.org. That's our online comprehensive, the most comprehensive candidate and ballot initiative guide in the state. So if you're interested in finding out more about the candidates or about the local levies, you can certainly go there, vote411.org. We did fill out the information for your website, so hopefully voters can make an informed decision based on that. I did not hear back from Sabrina at all. I sent several messages, but no contact with Sabrina. So I am very pleased that Travis and Johnathan and Lori have agreed to be here. Before we go further, I think Lori wanted to have just a second to describe what her position is currently vis-a-vis the candidacy for this position.
I had to give notes to myself. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for letting me be here and caring so deeply about libraries. My name is Lori Billaud, and I've been honored to be a candidate for the Ada County Free Library. I wanted to personally share with you something that has just happened in my family recently. My mother had a stroke last week, or it's all blending together now. She had a stroke and she fell and fractured her head. And so, this is why I wrote things down. So, my priority must be my family at this time. Because of the election timeline, my name will still appear on the ballot, but I will not actively be campaigning at this time. That said, I still have a strong commitment to the community. I'm part of the Lions here in Star. I'm active at the city council meetings and the town halls. I do want a strong, responsible leadership for the library and wanting it to remain strong. After getting to know the candidates and evaluating the commitment and qualifications, I have talked to everyone. I had talked to them on the phone. I am proud to be switching my vote over to Rachel Morehouse and Suzette Moore for the board. I firmly believe that Moore and Morehouse's family values, campaign readiness, and experience will best serve our library system and the people of Ada County. Thank you again for understanding. I appreciate your support and understanding at this time. Please say a prayer for my mom and for my dad, because my dad is the one who's taking care of her, and it's really difficult. She can barely talk. So please join me in supporting More and Morehouse as we work together to ensure the libraries remain strong for generations to come. Thank you.
Well, I think she deserves a round of applause. Thank you so much. And you're welcome to stay up here or join me on time to work, whatever you want, whatever is most
Yes,
comfortable for
and
you.
thank you. I wanted to respect that I had, RSVP'd, and that's why I wanted to come in person.
So, wouldn't it be lovely to have all participants in the forums treat us like this? All right, you are a model. Thank you so much. This candidates forum is going to be about an hour and a half long. We had given ourselves 2 hours, but given the number of candidates who are actually here, we'll probably wrap up about 7:30. And that clock over there says 10 after 2. So ignore that clock, right? Tonight's candidate forum rules call for adherence to the terms of civil discourse by both candidates and the public. So if you're okay with those rules, we'll forge ahead. The format for this evening is simple. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves and discuss what they hope to accomplish if elected to the board. And then they will each then have 2 minutes to answer some of the questions that you all have written on cards. And those will be coming up to me, and then I'll be reading the cards. It just helps with timing, getting efficiently. As they speak, you're welcome to write those more questions on more cards, and raise your hand, Colleen, if you still have some cards. There she is, right there. Okay. We will end with a 1-minute closing for each candidate. So your timekeeper is our state treasurer, Becky Proctor. She knows numbers, therefore she will show you 1 minute, half a minute, 15 seconds, and stop. Okay. The League of Women Voters of the U.S. is proud to have sponsored these types of forums for 100 plus years. Our forums are known to be respectful and well managed, and we look forward to continuing that tradition tonight. We're a grassroots network, and we membership organization that significantly depends on donors to help us do the work. Not that it's not Idaho Gives this weekend, I'm plugging that. So we didn't have a coin toss, but please tell me your birthday, and whoever's born closest to July 1st will be our first.
To you?
I'm January 5th.
It's my birthday today, so.
Oh, happy birthday, did I know that? All right. Okay. So 2 minutes if you would, and this microphone is probably your best bet. So
Okay.
2 minutes to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your position and what you hope to achieve.
Thank you, Jean. And thanks again for hosting this event. I think it's vital as a functioning republic that we make sure our people are out talking to people and holding people accountable. To that, my name is Johnathan Baldauf. I'm a local attorney. I have an office downtown, and I live out in kind of the southwest part of the county, right by the Lake Hazel Library. I bring that skill set as an attorney. What we're really talking about is organization, communication, attention to detail. That's why I think I'd be a good fit for this candidacy. More importantly, I bring a set of principles that I think would be helpful and would make sure that the board and then therefore the library is run well. First and foremost among those principles are transparency. I want to make sure that we're adhering to the Idaho open meetings laws. I want to make sure that we're very open, honest, and forthcoming with what's going on in our libraries and what's happening. We had an incident in 2023 where those open meeting laws were violated, caused the book ban to be effectively reversed. I think that's problematic, and I don't want to be in that position. Last board meeting, we had a very close to a secret ballot happen. Thankfully, it didn't, but that would have also been a violation of open meeting laws. So I want to make sure we're getting those squared away. Obviously, similar to that, accountability. making sure Lori's shaking her head that didn't happen. That did happen. In Idaho open meeting laws, you cannot have a closed or a secret vote. What ended up happening is the board members put their votes down onto a ballot. Now, they then solved that problem by saying that was my vote, that was my vote, that was my vote. I don't think it was a problem long term, but it was a hair's breadth from being a problem. And I want to make sure we're nowhere close to those issues. So transparency, accountability, First Amendment protections, that's what you can expect from me. I should also note, I want to make sure that our library has sufficient funding and sufficient connections to the community. So where we're doing things like with the Friends of the Ada County Library, we're expanding those out so people are connected to our community so they can make sure that the people trust their libraries, they trust the librarians, they know what's going on. If you haven't been to your library, stop in.
Thanks, John. Thank you for coming out. I'm Travis Worwood, and 2 things you need to know about me for this campaign. I love the library, and I'm a frequent user of the library. I'm there 3 days a week with my kids. We volunteered at the snack table at the World Music Celebration. We were volunteering at the summer reading kickoff this year. I got my church to come with me. The reason I'm sitting here today is because the librarians at my library said, this opening is coming up and we want you to go do this. So that's why I'm here, because of the library. It's an important part of my life, and I see it as a valuable part of the community. Something else about me, I've worked in state government. I know it's kind of a bad word, but I'm an experienced bureaucrat. I've been a social worker for 10 years. Now I'm a physician assistant, so I work in a very litigious field. And so I'd like to keep the board and the library out of trouble. I'd like us to not be on the news like the Meridian and Eagle libraries have in the last couple of years. I'd like to protect the library. I don't want us to be sued or embarrassed. I want to have the library keep doing the great job that it's doing. So those are the 2 things about me. What can you expect from me on the board? Again, I would use my influence to advocate for library funding and to not overly complicate librarians' jobs with new laws that are written by politicians and not librarians. I really just love the library and want to see it keep going. So thanks for having me. I'm excited about your questions.
Okay, do we have some questions who has the questions, the cards? Kendall, do you have the cards that are already written? Oh,
They're on the paper.
they're already on the table. Oh, here they are. I apologize. All right. Okay, we have that one answered. Let's see. The question was, why do you want to serve on the library board? I think we have that answered. Please give an example of a situation where you expanded transparency in a public arena on an issue you felt was important.
I can have an indirect answer to that question.
All right.
And I should quickly clarify one point that I don't know we clarified yet. Sorry, Jean,
That's all right.
to not answer the question. I will answer that question. There are 2 spots available on this board. There are 6 people running. So if on your ballot, you're going to see two openings. Choose 2. So to answer that question, I am a criminal defense attorney. And a lot of my job is holding the state accountable for what they have to do. Making sure that, for example, if evidence is seized illegally, or if someone crossed the line they shouldn't be crossing, that we're holding those people accountable. That is my day in, day out job.
This is a trickier question for me because actually I've worked as a social worker and in medicine, and all of my professional life is confidential. I don't out anyone publicly in what I talk about. I do think as a social worker working with families, there's some like behind the scenes things that happen in government, and I made every effort to keep the families apprised of what was happening and teach them how to access their records and their documents. That's not a public facing thing, it's very individual, but I think the principle is there that I feel like everything I'm doing should be above board and visible to all the stakeholders.
Great, all right. Great questions coming, thank you very much. We have some funding questions. So one is, how do you think the library should be funded? And another funding question, I will reserve until after you've answered that. So I'm going to be very diplomatic, very fair, and have you answer first, Travis.
Thank you. Just a note about library funding. I looked up what I paid in taxes for the library last year, and it was like $190. And so I feel like my return on investment for the library is fantastic. I could pay twice that much and still come out ahead. So I think as far as an investment in our community, libraries are a easy win. I think they should be funded by taxes because I want the library resources to be available to everyone without a barrier of cost. How many places can you go where there's no expectation that you're going to purchase something? That's a pretty short list. Parks and libraries and home. I don't know, and we've all got Amazon at home, right? So it's a pretty short list. So on the topic of funding, I know we're all disappointed by the recent federal funding cuts that are affecting our local libraries, and so maybe one of the roles of the board might be to advocate to any local decision makers to increase library funding to compensate for that. That's something I'm excited to explore. I also know Johnathan mentioned the Friends of the Library, and so local donations are very important. We take all our old books or new books that you're not going to take up shelf space and donate them to the Friends. They can use that. So thank you.
My answer for that is well. That's as simple as that. I think Travis hit this nail on the head. Our libraries are a place where people can come and have that third space that isn't work, isn't home, but they have a place to be able to be. As a kid growing up, it was after school, go to the library, you have a nice place to grab a book, enjoy that wonderful musty smell, and learn something, right? We get a lot of return on our investment with that. So when people need to learn skills for a new job, need to take the ASVAB, need to, hey, how do I read? There's literally a program in our library that allows children to read to dogs so they can practice those skills. And I think those are vital. The other side of that is I do worry that there are oftentimes strings that come along with funding. That's in the federal side and that's in the state side. I am a fan of local control. I want to make sure that our libraries reflect our community and our community values. That being said, federal funding does provide a good backup and kind of further funding to further that mission. And I think that's appropriate. We have a $13,000 grant from the county that we're not going to have next year. We're going to have to budget for and get that squared away. I don't like seeing those programs being cut because then we do have to step in other ways. And sometimes we have to cut librarians or we have to cut libraries. And I think that's unfortunate. I think there's a lot of benefit here. I think the community needs to get behind our libraries and make sure they have the resources they need.
Okay, here's an existential question. I'd like to know who asked here. Libraries are considered a public good. So why do you think they are considered that? And as a follow-on to that, why are libraries publicly funded?
Who's answering that one?
You.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll take
Johnathan
turns.
and Travis.
They're a public good because we're a republic. If you want a well-informed and our voters to have the ability to think critically, you need to be able to teach them, which means that our schools need to be properly funded, which means that our libraries need to be properly funded. If you don't have that skill set, our people can't think critically, they might not know where to vote, and we're for lack of a better term, we're hosed. I think that's unfortunate if we're going down that route. I want to make sure that we have people who are skilled to do their jobs, but also have outside skills to be able to do those things, communicate well, think critically, worry through, hey, who should I vote for? What is going on here? Is this a good policy or is this not? And be able to have that, that process to get things done.
Right. Here's kind of a nerdy answer. I think in economics, they talk about the velocity of money. So like $1 is printed, but I spend it at your store and then you spend it at another store. And so that dollar gets circulated multiple times. And I think about the value of a book. I can spend $20 on a book and I read it and maybe I share it with a friend. But if the library buys a book and 100 people check it out, we went far with that $20. Like it's like roads and law enforcement. It's something that we can pool our resources and we all benefit from it. So it just makes sense for the library to be a public resource. And I mentioned in my previous answer that for people who pay less taxes, they can still get the full benefit of the library, and that I think that's awesome.
Okay, I'm gonna have Travis start first on this one. This is politics and transparency. 2 years ago, the Ada Community Library Board attempted to ban 6 books from the library. Although that attempt failed, it caused deep distrust of the board by patrons and staff. As a board member, how will you restore trust in the library board? Travis?
I talked about how most of my positions have been confidential, my professional experience, but I think my role model for this question is Mary Ann Saunders, who's on the board right now. She has a newsletter. She is active in visiting the libraries, and when I was a library patron, I knew her name and had met her, and she talked about what she was doing on the board. So I think Jeff Kohler in the Meridian Library, he's written op-eds for the newspaper. He's made himself available and open. So I would like to be a board member like that. I've put my contact information out here as part of this campaign, and I guess I can never take that back. So I'm willing to be contacted and held accountable for our decisions. Even just in this crowd today, before we sat down, we talked about how the meeting time of the board is during business hours, early in the morning. It doesn't necessarily lend itself to community participation. And so I don't know the logistics behind changing that, but that's something we should explore. Can we make it easier for people to join our meetings or submit comments online? So I hope to follow those ideas.
I'd echo everything Travis just said. I would add, show up. Show up to these kind of events. Hold yourself accountable. Talk to the people about what's going on. Show up to the library, right? Meet with the staff. What are you guys seeing? How can we help? And I think by showing that you want to make that effort, you show that you care. And I think that's an important way of making sure we're going out. I'm backing that up with making sure we're getting the public involved in our decisions that we're making. I think is vital because, you go to these meetings. And I think the last one we had 6 people showing up and we have 6 candidates. So I think we had 5 candidates and 1 other person who had some sort of interest. I want to make sure people can show up, and I want to make sure that if they have something to say, we hear that. Because in a lot of ways, we are the conduit between the community and the library itself. And I think we should take that role and that responsibility seriously.
Can I steal like 20 more seconds?
You bet.
I'm just thinking, like librarians have master's degrees and they make decisions about how to run the library. So what is the role of a trustee on the board? And we're representing the community. We're untrained volunteers coming into this space to try and represent the interests of the community. So anything we can do to bridge that gap and open that door makes sense.
I guess this is a question that I have. It seems to me there's a lot of interest in the 2 races that we're having forums for here and in Meridian. There's a lot of interest in running for a board position. Why do you think people are so interested in something that used to be not so high profile? I'll start with you, Travis.
I mean, I really only know my motivation, but I think it's important to distinguish between school libraries and our public libraries, but there's been a lot in the news and in politics about the function, access, what literature children will have access to. I think that's a talking point for politicians now, and so I think that's why I think that the broader political environment in our country is worried about what information people have. And so I think maybe that's driving the interest. Also, I think, I hate to bring it up, but Project 2025 had an explicit goal of installing people who agreed with their philosophy in every level of government. So maybe there is a very deliberate drive to have our people in these positions or our people in these positions. So That's my thoughts.
Great, thank you. Jonathan?
I had a discussion. I get cranky about that idea, even though it's true, because I am of the opinion that people should have been showing up and carrying what's going on in their libraries decades ago. When I was a kid, they should have shown up then and been paying attention to those things. I agree with Travis's answer that a lot of it is political and noise, and I think we need to get back down to business. That's my position.
Okay, so who should decide what's in the library and how should those decisions be made? Jonathan?
I want Travis to answer that one first.
Go ahead.
So let's talk about how they are made, and I think this is an appropriate process. And let's talk and assuage some of those fears that we're going to have librarians. What's the word I'm looking for? Indoctrinating our youth, right? If they indoctrinate them in how to read, God bless them. I'll take that every time. But what ends up happening as far as our libraries work is our librarians, who are again trained professionals, go through and say, okay, well, this is a good book. We have a lot of demand for this book. Okay, let's select this and let's put it on the shelf. And hey, this other book hasn't been checked out for 3 years. Well, why is this taking up shelf space? We have a limited shelf space. It's not, a black hole that we just throw books into and we can pull them out whenever, right? So librarians are number one, right? That's your first point of impact and input. Secondarily, we have community input from the board. I think Ada County has this great policy that if you want to ban a book or you want to move a book from the children's section into the adult section, that you have to have been exposed to that material in some way. And I would put that as a kind of a policy of, did you read the book, right? Are you upset because you saw this somewhere? Or did you read this book and say, oh, wow, this is really tough? Also, there's a difference between I don't want my kids to read this and I don't want any kids to read this. And there's certainly a difference between I don't like this material and no one else should ever be exposed to this material. So the board has a process. There's a form you have to fill out, send out to that. And then from that process, the board can make the decision on whether or not we're going to pull this and go through and get rid of this material, or whether we're going to say, no, this still needs to stand. There's some other benefits that you're missing. For example, the Diary of Anne Frank. If you've heard anything that I've been doing in this campaign, I hammer on that book left, right, and center, because there is some explicit material in that book. And that can be a problem. However, there is incredible value in that piece of literature. And we should not be pulling that book off the shelves just because we don't like some of the things that are in it.
Thanks. How do books get into the library? And I don't have a master's degree in library science, and so I don't know the complex decisions librarians make about their demographics and the circulation patterns at their library and how they decide what material needs to be in the library. But I know that they know how that works and they're thinking about it. They have no interest in spending money on a book that no one's going to check out. And so I think that's how books get into the library. You touched on how books get out of the library or reshelved in the library. And I think that some groups are circulating, lists of bad books online to be challenged. Some of them weren't even in the library. So it wasn't a community member who had a bad experience at the library and wanted a book removed. It was someone who read something online and got energized about that and then made that request to the library staff. So I think our librarians do a great job and they're thoughtful about our collections, and it is the role of the trustees to review books that are challenged, and there's criteria and forms that they follow to do that, to show that we're representing the interests of everybody in the community. So I think bottom line, we all want kids to be safe in the library. We all want people to get the material that is appropriate for them, and we want something for everyone in our diverse community to have material they need available to them in the library.
Thank you, and remember there are questions, or there are blank cards if you're interested in answering or asking any questions. Okay, so why are so many people suspicious of libraries, and what is done to help them? I can't read this word. Oh, that's a bad sign, isn't it? What is done to resolve conflict? Okay, why are so many patrons suspicious of libraries, and what is done to resolve conflict? Jonathan?
If this is your question, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna reject the premise of the question for a little bit. I don't think many people are suspicious of our libraries. I think some people are. And what can be done? I already told you, go to your library. Meet these amazing people who, when Travis walks in with his 3 kids, hey, we got this new book that actually your kids might like. You want to check it out and look at it. These are not people who are trying to make your kid X, Y, or Z. They're trying to help your kid read. That's a great thing to be doing.
Thanks. I think I agree. I don't think many people are suspicious of our librarians, and when I've been out talking to people in the community about the libraries, 9 out of 10 people, their concern is, are you going to ban any books? And then maybe 1 out of 10 people say, I'm concerned about something my children might read in the library. And but when I ask them, have you had a negative experience in the library? No one has told me yes. Even people who have concerns about, are there age-appropriate materials shelved appropriate in the library? I've never talked to anyone who said, my kid got some, well, actually, I have talked to some parents who said, my kid checked out this book and it was weird and we returned it. But not like it was totally age inappropriate, it just wasn't our flavor. So I think I'm off the question here. You help me, but I don't.
Why do you think so many people, or
are
there's a
suspicious,
perception,
and what's being done
there's
about
a
it?
perception that many people are suspicious of libraries?
Yeah.
Where does that come from?
I think it comes from misinformation. Actually, I think people who have experience with libraries and spend time in the library have an overwhelmingly positive experience, and then there are elements in our society that want to use the library as a negative talking point, and that's where that comes from. I think it's lies. But what's being done about it? When there was the petition to close the Meridian Library a year and a half ago, the community showed up in overwhelming support. There was no chance that was going to happen. I think our community likes our library, and we have a lot of goodwill, and so it's a job of a trustee to maintain that goodwill and not spend it carelessly.
Oh, we'll get off the controversy just for a moment. Libraries aren't just about books. What's happening in the libraries now, and what do you anticipate, or what do you project out 5, 10, 15 years? So start with you, Jonathan.
I'm smiling because I love that question. What's happening now? Amazing things all over. Right, you can go to your library, and if you need to check out snowshoes, you can do that. If you need to check out a Wi-Fi hotspot, you can do that. If you are, hey, I can't figure out an answer to this question, I bet you I know someone in the library who can help you figure that out. So that's the general role. I know they're doing a scavenger hunt. Is that Meridian, or is that?
It's a Meridian library.
I'm sorry, they're not doing that.
Other libraries do it too.
Are they? Okay. Well, Alice can tell you if they're doing that. And of course, we're prepping for the summer reading program, which again, going back to the Friends of the Library, that's funded by the Friends and the work that they do to make sure the libraries have the support that they need. What do I anticipate in the next 5 to 10 years? That's a big question. I am very hopeful that if I had my druthers, right, what we can do is start making sure that we own our own property. That we lease some of this property, and there's some downsides and upsides to all those things. But I'm a big proponent of, if you don't own it, you don't have it, right? If a lease can be terminated, what does that look like? Other than that, I'd like to see a lot of the things that we're continuing to do to just continue to happen, right? And just build out that community support instead of having, the numbers that we have much more in the way of people who are coming over. If you go out to the Lake Hazel Library at 3 p.m., you're going to see a bunch of kids come out of school and go into the library, right? They're going to go in, they're going to use the food bank that they have there, they're going to hang out, and they're going to be in a place that I would much rather have them than hanging out in my neighborhood, causing issues in my neighborhood. Me worrying about, well, what's the neighbor kid up to? Are they safe? Are they good? I know they're safe at the library. So I don't have a great answer for that 5 to 10 year plan. but I can tell you growth and making sure we have stability and the ability to plan things out well is what I'm about.
Yeah, so we all seen some really cool stuff come out of the library. I get audiobooks on my phone all the time from the Libby app and ebooks sent to my e-reader. Then there's the Library of Things. You mentioned checking out snowshoes. My kids like the programmable robots and the guitar and all kinds of other stuff that I get nervous about bringing home because I don't want to break it. But so the Library of Things is cool. I think when my children were young, my wife and I talk about when our kids were like 2 and 4, it was the hardest years of our life. And toddler story time and art at the library was a refuge. And we could sit around with other parents who were in the same, having the same demands and spill glitter at the library instead of at our house. And I know there are classes for other groups too, these fit and fall proof or silver sneakers classes, or these learn a skill classes, or these book clubs, or dog tails. I think those things are all wonderful, and the library does a lot of great stuff. I know that the most of what they do is check out physical books still, and I trust our librarians to navigate what should be in their collections and what we're going to need, and as the landscape changes. But I think if I got to choose what changed in the library over the next 5 years, I'd see more of a community center, more of those events, more places for people to gather that don't cost money and are places we can meet our neighbors and fellowship with each other. That's been really important in my life, and I'd love to see that expand.
Jean, can I throw kind of a curveball there? One of the other things that I think we're gonna have to deal with in the next 5 to 10 years, and we've already dealt with one of them, is internet issues, but I think AI and how we manage that at the library is gonna be a tricky issue that I don't have answers for you. This is an issue that I'm raising, but we're gonna have to tackle that. It'll be interesting. I'm sure our librarians can do it.
And none of that will cost money, right? Full disclosure, I am a substitute chair yoga person at the library, at the Star Library. So if you wanted to fund anything, I'm thinking the annex would be the place. Okay. This is a lead kind of a question. It's a good one for you and for us. What can we do to get more awareness for this election? So often people use the language of an off-year election as if it's not important. Highway districts are important. Fire and ambulance is important. School levies are important. How do we shift the mentality that this is not an off year, this is another important election? And specifically when it comes to the library.
I wish I knew. I think that's one of the challenges in this election. When, a few years ago, we had a very similar election and 13% of registered voters showed up to vote. So I don't know the answer. When it's a November presidential election, you can't not know. The whole world is watching. But when it's a May election or an August election, you have to be looking to know that there's something to vote on. Could we, as a community, make it easier to register or automatically register people to vote? Could we make it so we don't have to renew our mail-in status every year? Are there things we could do as a community to get more people to the elections? Yeah, I think there are.
Did you want to join the league? Men are accepted. They're very.
That's always every election. I have that question about why aren't people showing up? Why aren't people showing up? Why aren't people showing up? Even the presidential, 30% of people don't show up. And as kind of a Constitution nerd and as an attorney and someone who's in that realm, and it is discouraging. I think part of my solution to that is to make politics no longer a dirty word, right? People need to understand that what is political is what is going to affect your daily life, right? I know even though sometimes it gets a little bit, we're focused on this issue and that issue and that issue. At the end of the day, this race is about a library, right? What is not more American, other than perhaps our public schools, than a library? So telling people like, yeah, you got to get out to this one and the other one and working to the rest. Now, that being said, the League of Women Voters and other similar organizations have been doing that for far longer than I've been alive, and we still have those problems. So I think if we get a little bit of to kind of take the temperature out of the room, a little bit more stability, have people expect more from their candidates and from their politicians, their officials, we'd be in a better spot.
I'm going to steal a little more time, if that's okay. I realize that I've been thinking about my perspective and my relationship with this library, and I'm speaking from a place of privilege, that I am safe and that my housing and job are stable. And when we think about how a third of registered voters didn't vote in a presidential election, I think about how many people are disenfranchised. They don't feel represented by either party. They worry that there could be negative repercussions for their voting, or their polling places are inaccessible or hostile. And so those are issues that are way above a library trustee's pay grade. But I want to just recognize, if we're going to be trash talking to people who don't vote, that there's reasons for that too, the systemic, built-in reasons that are stopping people from voting. I wish I had a wand for
I don't
that.
think I trash talked anyone.
We're gonna get you both in the league, I tell you that. So actually, a little bit on politics again. Two questions are similar. Should a book ever be banned? And relatedly, how would you protect children from being exposed to material which may not be age appropriate? Travis?
I do think it's an important distinction, a public library versus a school library, when you're reading news articles about books being challenged and removed from collections. And I have a lot of sympathy for people who think like, this shouldn't be in a high school library, this book shouldn't be in that collection. Like, I can see the reasoning. I don't think every book should be in a school library. Whereas a public library, your audience is a diverse group of adults. And so I think there are a few types of materials that aren't now in our libraries and shouldn't be. But I think we should take a pretty broad angle to try and represent everyone in the community. And then what can we do to protect children in the library? Right now, the safeguards in place, I think fit very well with personal responsibility and accountability. Like, I am my kid's parent, and they can't get a library card without me taking them and signing them up for it. And I can see every book that they check out, and I can ask them what they're reading when they're home. And you know, my kids don't drive yet, so I'm the one taking them to the library, and I'm there with them while they're checking out books. So I think most of that is my job for my kids. But I also recognize that, like, the library shelves things appropriately. There's a kids section where we expect to see kids digging through books and pulling things out, and there's a teen section, and a young adult section, and a fiction nonfiction section, and so we've shelved books appropriately. I was talking to some other librarians at the Lake Hazel branch, and like, they have databases of reviews of content for material, and so it's even like a PG rated movie might not be shelved with the family section of videos. If they thought there was something on it that was objectionable, they'd put it over with the PG-13 over in the adult section of the library. So they're already doing careful work and taking community feedback to make sure the library is a safe place for our kids.
I'll tackle, I think Travis did an amazing job. The other part I'm going to do, the should a book be banned? Sure. I'm sure there is a book that we can work through and kind of figure out that shouldn't be part of our material. Maybe a manual to how to create a nuclear bomb or something like that. I don't have a good example for that. However, I think we need to be very, very, very thoughtful anytime we're thinking about doing something like that. Because the moment you're saying that thought shouldn't be allowed, you have crossed the line that you want to make sure you're crossing. And I think it's important that we understand that. That being said, again, the average book, outside of those very strange things, I mean, we can talk about the Bible. There's some very explicit things in the Bible. Don't ever forget that. You want to be thoughtful about it. If you have a book in mind, as far as like, oh, what about this one? I'm happy to chat about that, but it's probably not in the library, would be my guess.
Oh, nobody's stealing anymore. So another question is about community values. Both of you have said that you represent the people in your communities. So how do you make sure that you are listening to community members and actually representing what they care about? Jonathan?
I kind of touched on this when I said show up, right? How do you know what's going on in your community? You're in your community in different ways. What does that mean? Well, you're out in public forums, you're out in, you're talking to your neighbors, doing those kind of things. Again, going to the library, right? If the librarian is dealing with a patron who's upset about something, they can handle it, but they might also say, well, hey, Johnathan just walked in. He's on the board. Maybe you talk with him about that. And I can say, hey, there's a form you can fill out. Here's the process. This is what it looks like. So I think being in those places is really what we're talking about when it comes to how do you know what the community is going on. I can also tell you, when we do those newsletters and do those kind of things that let people know what's happening, you do get feedback from that, right? So there are people who, I don't really want to talk about it. Oh, well, he reached out to me and said, hey, this is what's happening. You might probe them and prod them to say, well, hey, hold on. I had insert issue here. How do we solve that? And I think that kind of feedback is vital.
Yeah, I think getting opportunities to hear from the community, so that there is an opportunity for public comment on every board meeting. The agendas are posted on the website. Could we make that more visible? Could we advertise that? I think we could. We talked about if we change the time to make it so more people can come. That's an interesting thought. I think just as I've been trying to get elected to this position, I've had more conversations with people about the library and their concerns and their expectations for the library. And so I feel like I've got a lot of feedback from that. And we have to do that every 4 years if we're going to serve on the board long term. So I think just creating opportunities and then listening when people do give feedback.
Since we just have two candidates here tonight, the downside is we don't have 6 views up here. The upside is that we're going to close it out at 7. So I have 2 more questions and then we're going to do closing. Unless you all were just anxious to stay here till 8. The sun setting over here is just magnificent, but anybody who wants to stay for that can go outside. So in this library district of Lake Hazel, Victory, Star, and Hidden Springs, do the librarians get, do they get angry patrons or is this an oasis? Are these 4 places an oasis and far from the madding crowd? What's the atmosphere like and the relationships between the patrons and the librarians? I guess I should ask a librarian, but I'm asking you.
2 ways to answer this question. My observations spending time in the library, I have not seen any conflict. I've seen librarians knowing everyone's name and what they're interested in and what they're here for. I've had librarians say, hey, we grabbed that new Dogman book for Margaret for you. I've had, people know what event we're showing up for and say they're in the back, and that's been my experience. And then the librarians I've talked to, they've said, yeah, we got one angry person once in a while, but I think our community likes our library and loves our library, and the people who use it are welcomed and get along there. And just a note about the people who use it, I was talking to one of the library managers, and if you don't check out a book at the library over a number of years, then your card expires. I don't know if that's the right word, forgive me for people who know that. But the number of people in our community who do use the library is really high, something like 50%. I'm going to misquote a statistic here, but so that shows that our community is using the library and it is working as intended. We do get along there.
A library is a special place, and it's thankfully a quiet place. So I haven't seen much of that. I have, because of this underpinning that we have of like, oh, well, it must be very dramatic. What's going on? I've had that conversation with librarians. They tell me, generally, it's not a situation where we have a lot of high conflict situations.
Okay, and a last practical one. How do you view the difference between school libraries and public libraries, and how should they function differently? Travis?
Yeah, I think I remember being confused as a kid when school libraries had like fiction books to check out for fun. Actually, so school has a curriculum and a focus and a mission they're trying to accomplish. It's very specific, and a public library is much more broad, and it's this community resource that benefits this incredibly diverse, broad audience of people. So I think they are pretty distinct. What was the second part of the question?
How should they function differently?
Yeah. So I think we'll have much more targeted decisions in a school library about what to include and why, and probably a much lower threshold to reshelve or remove material at a school library than at a public library. Not probably, but definitely.
I only have the obvious to add to that. There are adults in a public library, and they need those other resources, whether that's job training or community space to meet and knit, whatever that might be. Other than that, I think kind of thinking of the children's section of our public libraries as a school library is probably obviously you're going to have more of a broad swath. You're not going to have just an elementary library, but that's probably a fine way of thinking.
And finally, we're going to do 1 minute closing statements. If you would, say anything you want. What 10 years from now do you want these people to remember about this night? No pressure. Travis?
I don't believe anyone's going to remember this night 10 years from now. No offense, but you've got more important things in your life. But hopefully we'll remember our service on the board and that we do a good job and that the library is still a wonderful, thriving part of our community. Something I wanted to say that maybe didn't say is that when I see these lists of challenged books, or when the West Ada School District had some books that were challenged, I remember some of my neighbors testifying that we should take the Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian off the shelf years ago. That I've tried to read the books that have been challenged and see what's objectionable about them. And so I would like, depending on the volume, I would like to do that if I'm on the board. I'm going to personally do my best to investigate every decision I have to make and actually read the material and see if it's appropriate. So that's something that I want to do. I like to read. I spend a lot of time reading. So there's that. Just a reminder, I love the library. I spend a lot of time there. I think that I would do a good job on the board. I think my experience is relevant and helpful, and my relationship with the library would be helpful. So please vote for me. Thank you.
10 years from now, I hope you don't remember this night too much, but I do hope that you remember the lessons you take away from that night. And that number one lesson I want to give you is demand more from your candidates. I originally wrote down expect more. I don't believe expect. I believe it's demand. You should demand more from your candidates up and down that ballot. Your vote is precious. And in a republic, it's one of the only things you have to be able to express your point of view, aside from taking the time and talking to hopefully your candidates, hopefully they're listening, hopefully your officials are listening. So if you take that away, great. What I hope 10 years from now you're seeing is that you remember that Travis and I were running the library well, that you trust us to make decisions for that library. The library is succeeding, right? And that more and more people are coming through those doors, checking out those books, and learning the skill set and learning the tools that they'll need to succeed in the future. So earn your vote. Make people earn your vote, right? Make sure that you're going to their website. What do I understand about this person? Make sure you're going to their social media. What are they posting? What do they believe? Be informed. And it takes work. And I'm sorry it takes work, but it does. And if you are a member of a republic and a citizen of this republic, it's your job. When you're concerned about your government not running well, fix that. Fix that at the ballot. If you aren't sure, there's a good candidate, run. So if you can take that message away, that'd be great. In the meantime, trust that I'm going to make smart decisions for your library, that this guy is going to do the same. I can tell you, running with Travis has been a pleasure. At the door, he's always able to say, well, this is what I'm seeing, this is what's going on, and is able to convey that message in a very thoughtful, but also an Idaho way, right? So I have a lot to learn from him, and I appreciate that he's running and that the librarians encouraged him to run, but I'd ask that you vote for both of us and make sure we can get your library squared away for the next 4 years. Thank you.
I did want to point out several members of our league who are here helping this evening. Becky Proctor, you've already met, the timekeeper. I assume she did well. Pauline was the
Amazing
person with the cards. Thank you, Pauline. Alicia Purdy is here. She's a league member. And Kendall Shaver is in charge of all of the greater Boise area Treasure Valley League members. So be extra nice to her on the way out. Joan Webster Ward, where are you? Yes, she is, she's lived here for a year. She just came from Iowa, which is actually Idaho. Or Ohio. It's one of those I states, right? You come to these things because you are fully aware and fully informed. But if you do have questions about this election or about registering or about identification requirements for registering anything, that's why we are here. Idaho, vote411.org, of course, is our voter's guide, our online voter's guide. Scattered material about that here. And little tiny cards that say, if you like this form, maybe consider an Idaho Gives donation. All right, I think that's it again. Oh, Becky.
Can I add one thing? The Vote 411 will be updated and available on May 5th. So if you're looking at it tonight, you won't see all the candidates on there until the 5th. They have that deadline of the 4th to complete those. And so don't think that it's not there. Wait till the 5th.
All right, thank you very much, Becky. All right, thank you all very much. Let's get out of school a little early, shall we? Enjoy the evening.